opportunity to give a talk for Amitabha Buddhist Center on this wonderful topic of creating peace in a chaotic world. And so actually there's going to be 4 talks. Tonight is the first one, and then it will continue every week for 4 weeks. Actually, I said tonight because where I am, it's night. I know where you are, it's morning. I forgot about that. So there'll be 4 talks over 4 Saturday mornings on this topic. So how about if we just start with a few minutes of sitting quietly to settle down our minds and get into a good state of mind, have a positive motivation for being here and joining this talk. So make yourselves comfortable. Sit in a comfortable position. Relax your body. Allow your breathing to flow in and out in a natural way, natural rhythm. And relax your mind. If there are any thoughts in your mind left from what you were doing earlier today or yesterday or any time in the past, put those thoughts aside for now. You can always pick them up again later and think about them, but for now, just be in the present moment, present place. And also try not to think about the future. You may have plans for what you're going to do later today, tonight, tomorrow, and so on. But again, put those thoughts aside and just let your mind, your awareness be here and now, the present moment, present place. Just for a few moments, be aware of your breathing going in and out. So doing that can help our mind be in the present because our breathing is in the present. It's happening here and now, not in the past or the future. So when we watch our breathing, naturally our mind, our awareness is in the present moment. So watching our breath coming in and going out is helpful for calming down our mind. And it puts our mind into a neutral state, neither virtuous nor non-virtuous. So we are advised to have a virtuous mind, a positive state of mind, when we listen to teachings, Dharma teachings, or do other Dharma activities. So it's always good to have a good motivation as our reason for listening and learning. And the very best motivation we could have, the motivation that will bring the greatest possible benefit for ourselves and also for others, is the Bodhichitta Motivation. That means wanting to become a Buddha, fully enlightened Buddha, to be able to help all other living beings. Some of you are familiar with that. You've heard teachings on it and done meditation on it. So if you're comfortable with that motivation, you can bring that into your mind. Think that you're listening to this talk in order to create the causes to become a Buddha, fully enlightened Buddha, to help all living beings. But some of you may not be so familiar with the idea of bodhicitta and don't feel ready to make that your motivation. But you might be able to feel another altruistic motivation, such as wanting to be as helpful to others as possible. The people around you, family, friends, people you work with, neighbors, and so on, people you meet and interact with, you would like to bring more positive energy to other people and to your relationships with other people. And so if that feels like a good motivation, something you can relate to, you could bring that into your mind and have the aspiration to learn something from this talk that will be helpful in your interactions with others. So you can bring more positive energy to them, to society, to the world. Okay, so I'm going to talk for a while and share some thoughts that I have on this topic, and we'll probably do a little bit of meditation as well. And then I'll leave some time at the end for you to ask questions. Yeah, so this, the title of the talk is Creating Peace in a Chaotic World. And this is actually the kind of motto for Sravasti Abbey, where I'm staying right now. And I asked the people here, where, how did they come up with that? And they said, oh, back in the early days when the Abbey was just starting to be developed, they were having some meetings to discuss how to proceed, how to develop the Abbey, and they wanted to have a website. And so they tried to think of something they could say, some interesting words they could say on the website. So one of the lay followers, a layman, came up with this, this phrase, creating peace in a chaotic world. And I think it is very appropriate. I like it. I really like it a lot. And it seems to be quite true. Just in a few years that I've been here, many people come here for retreats, and not just from America, but they come from other countries as well. Many different countries in the world. They come here for retreats. And also some people can't come here, but they follow retreats, courses online. And so they have kind of that kind of connection with the Abbey. And many people say that it does give them peace of mind just to know that this Abbey, this community is here, and that we're doing what we do and we're living the way we live. They say it just makes them feel very peaceful, knowing that there is this group of people living according to the Buddhist teachings, keeping our precepts, sharing the Dharma with the world, and so on. So let's start by just thinking about what is peace. It's a beautiful word, peace. And one meaning of that word is the absence of war. And so, it sometimes happens that two countries, or maybe several countries, like happened in World War II, World War I, there were many countries involved and they were fighting with each other. And finally they stopped fighting and then there was peace. But also conflicts can happen between groups of people, maybe not as much as war, but just sort of arguing with each other, angry at each other, maybe hurting each other, or even two individual people can have a kind of war going on between them, angry at each other, hurting each other, and so on. And so after this conflict goes on for a while, then it stops and there's peace. So we use the word peace in that way, the absence of war, absence of fighting and conflict. And wars and conflicts are terrible. Probably most of us have never had firsthand experience of that, but we've certainly heard stories. Some of you may have heard stories from your parents or your grandparents about what it was like when Singapore was occupied by the Japanese. And then, there's still wars happening in the world that we hear about and see photos of. And it's just terrible. So much suffering for both sides. Both sides have a lot of suffering. There's mental suffering in addition to the physical suffering, like all the injuries and death and destruction and so forth. So I don't think there's anybody in their right mind who likes war or conflict or fighting. So peace is something that's very attractive, very desirable for most people. So that's one meaning of peace. But then we also talk about peace of mind. And so that is something that we experience within ourselves, within our own minds. Although sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's difficult to feel peace of mind. And even if there's external peace, like our country, or our community, our family, there may be peace out there, outside of us, but we may not feel peaceful inside of us. And so what happens, or what can happen, is a kind of inner chaos, a lot of thoughts, a lot of emotions that we don't want and we don't choose to have, but they just kind of arise in us. And they can make us feel really disturbed and unpeaceful, unhappy. And sometimes it can even feel like hell, like a mental hell. So many people have those kinds of experiences. And when that happens, people may try to escape from this internal chaos and suffering. They may use things like alcohol or drugs, or they go gambling, or they eat, or watch entertainment. So they try to escape from this inner suffering in these ways. And they may get some temporary relief through those methods, but they don't really solve our problems. Yeah, so the problems are still there. And these escape attempts, these attempts that we use to escape, they can sometimes cause additional problems. Like when people use alcohol and drugs, then they can become addicted. Then they have this problem of addiction. Where if they overeat, then they become obese and have health problems. Yeah, so the things we do to try to escape from our suffering, from our problems, can just make more problems, additional problems. And sometimes people have so much inner suffering, they even have thoughts of suicide, thinking that that is the only way to stop this inner suffering. So what I'm talking about here may sound rather extreme, and you might think, oh, that's never happened to me. But it does happen. It's happened to me. I've had experiences like that, and I know other people also have experiences like that. And even if your experiences are not that bad, not so extreme as that, I think everyone, at least sometimes, does have minor versions of inner chaos. For example, feeling very confused, or feeling hurt, or sad, lonely, restless, depressed. So everyone has their times when internally they lack peace. They don't feel peaceful and happy. And when those experiences happen, I'm sure we don't like them. We would like to be free from them. And we would like to have a state of mind that is peaceful and calm and joyful and positive. So according to Buddhism, it is possible. It is possible to find inner peace, even when there are those kind of disturbing thoughts and emotions coming up in our mind. So Buddhism explains a lot of different methods we can use to work on our mind, to work on our thoughts and our feelings. And so that means it is possible to find inner peace, even when the outer situation is chaotic. And like nowadays, many people do feel that way. They feel like there's just so many problems in the world. There are these wars and conflicts, and many refugees trying to escape from wars and conflicts and trying to find a better life, but having difficulty finding a better life. And sometimes they end up in refugee camps. And then with the pandemic, the coronavirus and the pandemic, that has brought a lot of problems as well. And there's political problems. So there's lots of problems out there. Oh, and climate change, of course, for many people, that causes a great deal of suffering. I heard of one study that was done just recently, where they interviewed 10,000 young people in different countries, some in Europe, some in South America, on different continents. They just wanted to do a survey to find out how these young people feel. And the majority of these young people that they surveyed felt quite depressed and despair about the environment, about the climate crisis and so on. And yeah, so many people are suffering because of that. So anyway, the point I'm trying to make is, even if there's lots of problems outside of us, in the world or in our community and our family, we can still find peace within ourselves. And so I'm going to share some methods in these series of talks. They're not so difficult to learn and practice. They're pretty easy, but we do have to practice them. And if we do, then slowly and gradually, we will experience more inner peace. And if we can have peace in our own mind, then there's a greater chance for there to be peace outside of ourselves, within our family, within our circle of friends, in our workplace, our neighborhood, our country, and in the world. So I'll read something from the Dalai Lama. This is actually a foreword that he wrote to a book by Thich Nhat Hanh, which is called Peace is Every Step. So a lot of Thich Nhat Hanh's writings are on that theme of peace. Okay, so this is what the Dalai Lama says. Although attempting to bring about world peace through the internal transformation of individuals is difficult, it is the only way. In other words, if we want to have world peace, we have to transform ourselves. Wherever I go, I express this, and I am encouraged that people from many different walks of life receive it well. Peace must first be developed within an individual. And I believe that love, compassion, and altruism are the fundamental basis for peace. Once these qualities are developed within an individual, he or she is then able to create an atmosphere of peace and harmony. This atmosphere can be expanded and extended from the individual to his family, from the family to the community, and eventually to the whole world. So I remember once meeting a man. He was actually a minister, a Christian minister, and he told me that for many years he had been involved in different groups trying to bring about peace in the world. And he was involved in these groups for like 30 years, so that's a long time. And eventually he got discouraged and left all these groups because he said his experience was that these groups were not very effective in bringing about peace because within the groups themselves, there was a lot of arguing and a lot of conflict, and they couldn't get along, they couldn't agree. So that's just within the group itself. And also they would have conflicts with other groups. So different groups working for peace, but they don't even know how to get along with each other. Yeah, they're fighting with each other. So how can you have peace in the world if you can't even have peace within your own group, and your group is trying to have peace? You know, the aim of the group is to bring about peace in the world, but you can't even get along with each other. So obviously that's just not possible. So the Buddhist, and what His Holiness here is saying, is that if we want peace in the world, we have to have peace within ourselves. We have to learn how to keep our own mind peaceful and positive and constructive. And we also have to learn how to get along with other people, with our family, our friends, our neighbors. So we have to know how to have peace in our own lives and in our own circle of people. And only then will we be able to have peace in the greater community. I mean, having peace in the entire world, you know, the whole world being at peace, that may be unrealistic. Because according to Buddhism, we are in samsara, and samsara, sometimes it's translated as cyclic existence. Samsara is the situation that we are in as long as we are not enlightened, as long as we still have ignorance and afflictive emotions in our mind, like greed, hatred, ignorance, jealousy, arrogance, and so on. These klesha. They're called klesha in Sanskrit and Pali. We sometimes call them delusions or afflictive emotions. So we have these within our mind, and under the influence of these delusions, we act, we do actions. Our actions, that's what karma is. Karma means action. And then any action we do, any karma we create under the influence of afflictive emotions leads to suffering, leads to problems for ourselves and also for others. And so Buddhism teaches a way to get out of this situation. But as long as we are in this situation, as long as we are in samsara, we can never be completely free of suffering and problems. There will always be problems. So the Buddhist view is, it may sound kind of pessimistic, but ourselves and all the people in the world around us, we're in samsara. Our minds are not perfect and pure and enlightened. We're just full of these delusions, these afflictive emotions. And as long as that is the case, then it's very difficult to have absolute peace and everyone getting along with each other and everything being perfect and harmonious. So having peace in the entire world may be too big of a something to aim for, but at least if we can have peace in our own minds and emanate those peaceful feelings to as many other people as possible, then that's the best we can do. Okay, so one thing that is important is to understand that it is possible to change our mind. Buddhism says our mind is like a stream of mental states, different kinds of thoughts and emotions and memories and so on. And it's constantly changing. Like each moment, there are different thoughts, different feelings, different memories, and so on arising and passing. That's just the nature of our mind. And so there's nothing in the mind, no state of mind that's permanent, fixed, always there, always the same, and impossible to get rid of. So that's true for even the most negative thoughts that we might have. Painful and negative thoughts and emotions like anger or depression or fear, really difficult states of mind that we may have. So they're not permanent. They are impermanent. They're things that come and go, like clouds in the sky. I'm looking at the picture behind Guacheng. There's a sky with clouds in it, but those clouds don't look like they're moving. But normal clouds in the sky, they are transitory. They're not permanent and fixed. They move. They move through the sky. They come and they go. So in a similar way, the thoughts and the emotions in our mind come and go. None of them are permanent. So let's just do a little meditation to explore that and see if we can see the truth of it or not. Okay, so once again, sit comfortably and you can close your eyes to focus better your mind. And think of a disturbing experience that you've had. For example, feeling angry or upset or depressed or anxious, some kind of painful thought or feeling or emotion that you had even either recently or even long ago in the past. And now ask yourself if that particular state of mind, thought, or emotion is always there in your mind. Every day, every minute, every second. Is it always there? Or is it just something that is occasionally there in your mind? Can you think of times, experiences where you didn't have that particular thought or emotion? You didn't feel that way. And see if you can remember times when you felt the opposite way. Like, for example, instead of being angry, you felt kindness, compassion, or peacefulness. Instead of depression, being depressed or despair, you felt positive, optimistic, even joyful. So if you were able to remember times when you didn't have that disturbing, painful emotion, and that you even had the opposite state of mind, then that shows that that disturbing thought or emotion isn't something permanent, a permanent, fixed part of your mind, of your experience. It's something transitory, like a cloud in the sky or like a bubble. And also that you have the capacity to experience very different states of mind that are more positive or at least more neutral. So I hope that made sense to you. It is important to recognize that negative thoughts, negative emotions are transitory, temporary, impermanent, not permanent. Because that shows that it is possible for our mind to change. Because some people may think, oh, I'm just such an angry person, or I'm such a depressed person. I'm always depressed. I will always be depressed. I'll never be able to get out of this state of depression. So some people may think that way. And if they think that way, then they may feel it's hopeless to even try to change their minds. So they may not even have the energy, the interest to try to do things with their mind to bring about changes. So I think it is really important to recognize that our mind is by nature changeable. It changes by itself, even without us having to do anything. It just changes. And we've all had that experience. Sometimes you're in a really bad mood, and then a few hours later, or the next day, or a few days later, it's gone. That bad mood isn't there anymore, and you're feeling happy again. So that just shows that, yeah, bad states of mind are transitory. But we don't have to wait for those bad thoughts and feelings to go away by themselves and be replaced by good ones. We can make changes in our mind. We can do things with our mind in order to stop the negative thoughts and increase the positive thoughts. In fact, that's a huge part of Buddhism. That's a very important aspect of Buddhism, is working with our mind to make our mind more positive and less negative. So I thought to share with you something. This isn't strictly speaking Buddhism, but Dr. Richard Davidson, he is a meditator and he's a good friend of the Dalai Lama, and he's a neuroscientist, and he founded a organization called the Center for Healthy Minds at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, here in America. And some years ago, he gave a talk entitled 4 Keys to Well-Being. So he's using the expression well-being rather than, peace of mind. But I think well-being is an important component of peace of mind, of inner peace. So he talks about how he and his colleagues identified 4 factors, 4 skills that can be learned, we can train ourselves in, and these are conducive to well-being. So I'll just read some of what he said. He says, well-being is a skill. It is fundamentally no different than learning to play the cello. If one practices the skills of well-being, one will get better at it. So this is true for what we say in Buddhism as well, like meditation, or increasing our positive thoughts and decreasing our negative thoughts. It's a question of learning and training. And the more we do it, the better we get. Similar to learning to play a musical instrument. When you first start learning, you cannot play perfectly. You cannot play these beautiful musical compositions perfectly. But if you practice and you really are diligent about learning and practicing, then slowly your skill will increase, and eventually you will be able to play this musical instrument. So it's kind of similar with our mind. In the beginning, we can't work with our mind very well, but if we learn and practice and train, then slowly it will get better. We will be able to have more positive states of mind and less negative ones. And then he goes on to say, based on our research, so they were doing scientific research or studies. Actually scientific, because they're working with the brain, they're studying the brain. So he says, based on our research, well-being has 4 constituents that are rooted in neural circuits. Each of these neural circuits exhibits plasticity. So we know that if we exercise these circuits, they will strengthen. Practicing these 4 skills can provide the substrate for enduring change, which can help to promote higher levels of well-being in our lives. So he's introducing these 4 factors that we can learn and practice and they have what do you say, a neural component, a neural connection. So you can actually see in the brain that there are changes that they take place when we practice these. So the 4 that he mentions are resilience. That's the first one. Second is having a positive outlook. Third is attention, being able to keep our attention focused on an object of our choice. And generosity, which is very much connected with kindness and compassion. So some of these 4 terms do appear in traditional Buddhist teachings, but some do not. For example, resilience. I've never heard that or read that in traditional Buddhist teachings, but I think it's there. Even if that word isn't there, I think the idea of resilience is there. So I'll start by talking about that one, and then over the later other talks, we'll talk about the others. So resilience is the rapidity with which we recover from adversity. Okay, so everyone experiences problems sometimes as they go through life. They can be sickness or injuries or loss of a loved one, loss of a job. So yeah, different kinds of unpleasant things happen to us in our life. And some people are able to quickly recover, or not just in a physical sense, but in an emotional sense. They're able to get back to some state of emotional stability from these problems. So that shows they have a lot of resilience. Other people, on the other hand, when they experience problems, they get very upset, very depressed, and they can remain in that state for a long time. And some people never recover. Some people remain depressed and anxious, maybe for the rest of their life. So that's the meaning of low resilience or lack of resilience. So he goes on to say, individuals who show a more rapid recovery in certain key neural circuits have higher levels of well-being. They are protected in many ways from the adverse consequences of life's slings and arrows. Research shows that these brain circuits can be altered by regular practice of simple mindfulness meditation. So the practice of mindfulness, which is, a pretty basic and relatively simple meditation practice in Buddhism, that can increase our resilience. And when we have more resilience, we can have greater well-being. So, yeah, everyone does experience problems in life. Nobody can go through life and never have problems. This is the first noble truth that the Buddha taught: true suffering, true dukkha. It's there in everybody's life. Even the billionaires, the millionaires, the celebrities, they all have problems. Some of these problems are things that happen directly to us, but there's also, we also sometimes get worried and upset about problems happening outside in the world. Things we read about in the news, things that are happening in our country, and so on. So I don't have too many personal problems, but when I read the news and hear, stories of what's going on in the world, what's going on with other people, that can make me feel quite unhappy, worried. So although everybody does face problems, not everybody handles them in the same way. As an example of this, there's a story of 2 men who were in a hospital, a veterans hospital in America. So they both were soldiers, and they both had the same kind of injury. They lost a leg. So one of these 2 men was curled up in his bed in a fetal position, completely depressed and miserable. But the other man, who had the same injury, he'd also lost a leg, he was sitting up in a wheelchair, very animated and lively, talking about his plans, what he was planning to do. So even though they had the same terrible, tragic event, losing a leg, the way they responded to it was quite different. So, of course, there could be other factors that enable one person to handle problems better than another person, like how serious the problem is, and whether or not one has a support system, family and friends who are there to help you, and one's education, one's experiences in early life, and so on. So there's lots of different factors that can affect how we respond to problems. But one factor is definitely our way of thinking, our way of looking at things. What is going on in our mind? What kind of thoughts and feelings and attitudes we have in response to events. And the good news is this is something we can work on. We can change. Yeah, we can learn to face problems and go through problems without being so depressed and upset and remaining in that state of mind for a prolonged period of time. So there's one sutra called the Salata Sutra, in which the Buddha said that when we have a problem, it's like being shot with an arrow. And that's painful. Okay, so definitely the problem is painful and unpleasant. But depending on the way we respond to this problem, we might shoot ourselves with another arrow. So having two arrows is doubly painful rather than just having one arrow. So what he means by shooting ourselves with a second arrow is if we react to the first problem in an unwise way or in an unskillful way. For example, if we get angry, blame somebody else for the problem, and or just get really upset about it, feel sorry for ourselves, kind of drown in self-pity. Poor me, how terrible this is. Why does this have to happen to me? And so on. Or thinking that the problem is permanent, it's going to be there forever and ever and ever. So there's certain types of thoughts that might arise in our mind, and our mind just might go through those thoughts again and again and again. And if that happens, and if we don't control our mind, but those thoughts just keep going, then we're just making ourselves more miserable, more unhappy, rather than better, rather than, dealing wisely and skillfully with the problem. I don't think people deliberately do this. I don't think they choose to have these kinds of thoughts. It's probably just habit, or maybe they just don't know any better. These thoughts just come up in their mind and they don't know what to do about them. So they just get completely caught up in them and carried away by them. But the important thing is to recognize that those kinds of thoughts don't help. And not only do they not help, but they make things worse. Because on top of the first problem, which is like the first arrow, you have all these unhappy, painful, negative thoughts going around in your mind, sometimes all day long, and you might not be able to sleep, you might not be able to eat, and so you're just really, really miserable. So that we can probably relate to that. We probably have all had experiences of that. And so the Buddha said that a wise person, a skillful practitioner, just stays with the first arrow, the first problem, and doesn't let their mind get carried away with all these other negative thoughts that just adds to the problem, makes things worse rather than better. So I'll give you some ideas on how we can do that. How we can respond to problems, unwanted experiences, painful things that happen in our life, to avoid shooting ourselves with a second arrow, maybe a third arrow, a fourth arrow, and so on, just making things worse for ourselves. Okay, so one thing that is very helpful is to use breathing to calm down our mind and to make our mind more clear. So one way of doing that is a deep way of breathing, meaning that, like, for example, I mean, if you're upset about something or frightened about something or whatever, yeah, it can be helpful to just sit down quietly and do some deep breathing in the sense of breathing in slowly and then pausing for a moment and then letting your breath go out slowly. Do that even just 1, 2, 3 times. It actually has an effect on your body. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the system that is related to relaxation and rest and digest, as opposed to the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight response. So we do sometimes need to have the sympathetic nervous system activated, the fight or, if we are in danger, we do need that system activated. But it's not good to be in that mode all the time, to always be, in that stressed mode, fight or flight mode. And so it is helpful sometimes to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is more relaxed, calm. And so this way of breathing, it's especially the long, slow exhalation of the breath that activates that parasympathetic nervous system. And so naturally you feel more calm, and physically, when you're physically more calm, your mind will also be more calm. And then you're not so stressed, unhappy, and you'll probably be able to think more clearly to find a solution to the problem rather than just kind of going crazy with it. So I tried this one time. I was in Israel and I needed to drive a car in Tel Aviv, and it was just such a frightening experience because the way people were driving, just really fast and really aggressive. And I hadn't driven a car for many years. I wasn't even used to driving. And then I was just surrounded by all these kind of aggressive and speedy drivers. And I felt like I was going to have a panic attack. Really, I felt so nervous. So I started doing this deep breathing while I was driving. And it really helped. Yeah. But I was also talking to myself. I was saying to myself, now calm down, relax, you're going to be okay. Don't worry. So I was trying to, talk myself out of this frightened state that I was in. And it did help. I was able to get home safely without having a panic attack or getting into an accident. So yeah, I do have confidence in that method. It really does help. And then Thich Nhat Hanh also talks about just what he calls conscious breathing. So a simple way of doing this is, and this is taught by the Buddha, it's not something he made up, but the Buddha taught this. As you breathe in, you say to yourself, breathing in, I know that I am breathing in. And as you breathe out, say, breathing out, I know that I'm breathing out. Just that. You recognize your in-breath as an in-breath and your out-breath as an out-breath. You don't even need to recite the whole sentence. You can just use 2 words, in and out. This technique can help you keep your mind on your breath. As you practice, your breath will become peaceful and gentle, and your mind and body will also become peaceful and gentle. So this is basically mindfulness of the breathing. So that's another thing you could try instead of the deep breathing. Just sit quietly and pay attention. Breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. Just do that for a few minutes. And you will find that your body gets more calm and your mind will become more calm, rather than caught up in all these disturbing thoughts. I mean, the real purpose of mindfulness practice in Buddhism is to become aware of our thoughts so that we can recognize which kinds of thoughts and emotions are helpful and constructive and, ones that we want to have more of, but then which kinds of thoughts and emotions are not helpful and are maybe even harmful and destructive and counterproductive, so that we can recognize those and then say, no, I don't want my mind to be ruled by those kinds of thoughts. I don't want to let my mind get caught up in those kinds of thoughts. So let's just do that for a few minutes, and then we'll stop and have some questions. And it might be helpful to bring to mind an experience that you had recently where you did feel unhappy or upset or frightened or angry, some kind of problem that you encountered, and your mind reacted with some unhelpful thoughts, unhelpful feelings. So imagine that you're in that situation again, but instead of getting all caught up in those unhelpful thoughts and feelings, imagine yourself sitting down and saying, I'm just going to do some breathing meditation, some mindfulness of the breath. And then do that practice that Thich Nhat Hanh recommended. As you breathe in, just say, I'm breathing in. As you breathe out, say, I'm breathing out. Or just simple words like in, out. And just do that for a few minutes and see what kind of effect it has on you, on your body and on your mind. So doing meditation on the breath when we have a problem doesn't mean we're trying to avoid the problem, we're trying to escape from it. What we're trying to avoid is thoughts and emotions, reactions to the problem that are not helpful and that just increase our unhappiness, increase our suffering. So focusing on the breath for a few minutes can help our mind find a place that's more calm and more clear. And when our mind is more calm and more clear, then we're in a better state of mind to think of a solution to the problem, a solution that's more skillful, more constructive, rather than unskillful and negative. So see if you can do that with this more calm, peaceful state of mind that you're in now after doing breathing meditation. Look again at that situation, that problem, and see if you can think of a helpful solution, a helpful remedy to the problem. So there's a verse in a classic Buddhist text called The Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life by Shantideva. Probably some of you have read it and studied it. And the verse goes something like, why be unhappy about something if there is a remedy? And is there any use to being unhappy about something if there isn't a remedy? That's just a paraphrase. But the point is, when there's some problem, some difficulty, some unpleasant situation, if there's a remedy, a solution to the problem, then go for it. Apply the remedy, apply the solution, at least try to remedy the problem. It may not be successful, but at least try. Worth a try. And because, instead of trying to apply a solution, if we just think about it and worry about it and complain about it, and, our mind's just going around and around in circles. And that's not very useful. That's not very constructive. And again, we're just making ourselves more unhappy, more disturbed. So if there's something we can do, do it. Try it. On the other hand, sometimes there isn't a solution. It's not possible to change the situation, to solve the problem. So if we recognize that, again, it doesn't help to worry about it, be upset about it, be angry about it. That's not going to help. That's not going to change things. And again, we're just going to make ourselves more unhappy. So he says it's better to accept it, to just accept. This is how it is. And we can always do something on a spiritual level. We can do prayers, we can do meditation. Okay, so there's always something we can do, at least on our mental level. Even if we can't change the situation out there, we can at least change our mind about it. So I like that verse very much. It's very helpful when I find myself in a situation, in a problem. Is there something I can do about it? Okay, do it. There's nothing I can do about it. Better to just accept it. So Buddhism isn't saying that we shouldn't try to solve problems. Okay, if we can solve problems, then that's great. But sometimes it isn't possible. And so in that case, it's better to accept it and not let your mind feel unhappy and worried and upset. Okay, so I'll stop there for tonight, and I will have more to say next week about how we can work with our minds and keep our minds more positive and peaceful, constructive, even when there are problems happening in our own life or problems happening out there in the world. So if anyone would like to ask a question, you can raise your hand, ask your question, or write it in the chat box if you prefer.
Yes, if there's anyone who would like to ask a question, they can use the function at the bottom where there is the three little dots. Yeah. Oh, under the reaction, sorry. Under the reaction, there's this raise hand function. And we can queue your questions. We can unmute you to ask a question. Or you can post it in the chat to me, Guaching, or to Amitabha Buddhist Center, the host. Yeah. Okay, still no questions right now. But maybe Robert, actually I was just very curious. Like a lot of times, like when we are in a very depressive mood, sometimes it's not easy to recollect all these methods, or it doesn't even occur to us that we actually have a mental what do you call that, broken recorder kind of mental activities going on, and it goes on and goes on and goes on. So I was just wondering whether there's a method to kind of like jot our mind a bit to turn it away, or is it really just this habit of doing mindfulness meditation? Yeah, so
I couldn't hear all the words you said, but you're saying that sometimes when a problem happens, you get depressed or whatever, it's difficult to remember these kind of methods, these solutions, and instead the mind just gets carried away with negative thoughts. So is that right? And so is there a way that you can quickly remember?
yes. That's a gist, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have to admit, it still happens to me. I still, have negative reactions sometimes to things, and I don't immediately remember to apply something, some positive solution. But I guess for me, the negative reaction is so painful. It's so unpleasant, you know, and I just don't feel good. It just doesn't feel good. And so that will prompt me to do something with my mind. Yeah, I'll give you an example. Something happened to me just today. I was looking at the news, and there was like this, just like something that had just happened. There was this trial in America, this young man named Kyle Rittenhouse or something. There were some riots. I can't remember when they happened. It was the Black Lives Matter riots last year, I think it was. And so there was this one town, one city in Wisconsin where people were kind of rioting. And this young man was in another state even. And I think he was only about 17 years old. And he thought, oh, I have to go there and do something. And he got this gun, like a really big gun, and went. And I mean, I don't know the whole story, but he ended up killing a few people. And so he was on trial just recently, and they just had the verdict. The jury declared him innocent of all counts because he acted in self-defense. So that news just came in, and I found myself feeling very unhappy because like one person commented that if he had been a Black boy, if he had been a young man and was Black, they would have killed him. The police would have immediately killed him. But because he was white and not Black, then not only, anyway, he's declared innocent. So there was this kind of angry feeling in my mind that he was let off without any prison sentence or any punishment for what he did. But it was so unpleasant, that feeling that I had was so unpleasant that I wanted to change it. I wanted to get out of that state of mind and into a better state of mind. So later I was thinking about how, okay, so he doesn't have to go to prison for what he did. He gets to go home and live a free life, even though he killed a couple of people. However, he still has that karma in his mind. I mean, being acquitted by the jury doesn't eliminate his karma. He still has that karma. And he also has that memory. I mean, having killed at the age of just 17, having killed a couple of people on the street, that must really be painful. That's going to be with him in his mind probably for the rest of his life. And just now I was thinking about it again, and I was thinking, I really hope and pray that his mind will change as a result of this whole experience, and that he will give up any kind of wish to use guns and engage in violence, and instead become a very, compassionate, kind, caring person. that will be the result of this whole experience, that he will learn some very good lessons from this. So it took me a while to get to that, that state of mind. But once I did, then, I can see, that's a much better way of thinking and feeling about that situation rather than my initial reaction. So I'm just saying that as an example of how, even in my case, it sometimes takes me a while to get away from a negative reaction to a more positive reaction. But I guess in my case, it's just because the negative reaction, it's just so obviously painful. It's like having a thorn in your flesh, having a thorn in your skin, and it's really painful. So you want to get it out, and you want to heal it and do something more positive and more constructive. So I don't know if that's helpful or not, but yeah. And I guess too, having had experiences of where, oh yeah, sometimes my mind just did get caught up in and carried away with a negative reaction, and just seeing how useless that is and how you don't have to do it, knowing that there's a choice. I can think in a more positive way. I can do something much more positive and constructive with my mind that is clearly feels better. You just feel better about yourself mentally and physically. So if you have some experience of doing that, then you can say, yes, I did that before and it was much better. I felt much better. It really worked. And so I want to do it again. So the more you try this, the more you work with these methods and see how, oh, they really do help. They really do help my mind be in a better state. Then you naturally want to do that again and again and again. So I think that's another way to go.
Thank you, Venerable. Okay, there's a question from, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. There's a question from Mabel. Much of Buddhism is about mind training. When people are ill and do not have mental peace, is there a way to help others find peace of mind?
Sorry. So a lot of Buddhists.
When people are ill, when people are
Ill?
not unwell, sick.
Oh, okay. So somebody's sick. Yeah.
And they do not have mental peace, because of the illness. Is there a way to help them find peace of mind?
Yeah. Well, we can't go into somebody else's mind and fix it. That's impossible. Even the Buddha can't do that. So even if we have the strong wish to help another person have peace of mind, less mental suffering and more positive state of mind, we can't do that for them. That is impossible. And we can try different methods. We can try to talk to them and show a lot of compassion and love. And one thing is to find out if they have any religious beliefs or spiritual beliefs. And if they do, then we can encourage them to use their spiritual practices and spiritual beliefs, to find more peace of mind. Like, for example, if the person believes in Kuan Yin, for example, or if they believe in Amitabha Buddha, then you can talk to them about Kuan Yin or Amitabha, and you can say, don't feel alone. Kuan Yin is always there, always with you. Just think of Kuan Yin, pray to Kuan Yin, recite the mantra, and, something like that to, help them do something that will help them feel more peaceful. But on the other hand, if the person doesn't have any beliefs like that, any spiritual beliefs or spiritual practices, you could try to talk to them in some other way, like using the language of psychology. It is difficult. It's not an easy thing. So all you can do is try and, maybe talk in different ways, and maybe one of those ways will work for the person, will help the person. But a lot of it comes from them. A lot of it depends on them, on their state of mind and their way of thinking and so on. I was just remembering one time a woman told me that she had a friend who was suffering from cancer, and he was very angry because he felt that the doctors should have found it earlier. They should have been able to diagnose his cancer earlier. And then there would have been a chance for him to be treated and recover. But because they found it late, then it was kind of too late to be able to cure the cancer. So he was so angry at his doctors. And she was trying really hard. I mean, she was a Buddhist and really wanted him to have a peaceful state of mind and die with a peaceful state of mind, but she wasn't able to. He just continued being angry, and then she felt so bad. He actually was angry up until the end of his life, and she felt so bad that she wasn't able to help him. So I said to her, you can't change somebody else's mind. You know, even a Buddha can't change somebody else's mind. So all you can do is try your best, but don't feel bad if you're not able to do it. You know, don't kind of beat yourself up and think you're a failure if you can't change someone's mind. But I always think, even if the person is in a bad state of mind and you can't help them change their mind, you can still do prayers for them. So you can pray for them and meditate. You can imagine the Buddha above the person's head and light going into them. That might help. That just might help their mind to change. So at least you're doing something rather than feeling helpless. Yeah. So you can pray on their behalf and recite mantras on their behalf and pray to Buddha on their behalf, even if they are not able to do that themselves.
Okay, I think there were like, let me see, 1, 2, 3. Maybe just as say thank you to whoever. So there's 3 other questions. The first question is from Christine. Dear Venerable, is patience the most important key factor to cultivate while waiting problems to go away when there is no solution to them at all? Thank you very much.
Patience. So waiting for a problem to go away when there's no solution. Yeah, I can talk more about that next week because yeah, there is a whole section of teachings, practices called How to Transform Problems into the Path. And that's also actually one of the types of patience. There's 3 types of patience. One is learning not to get angry at people who might be harming you. But one kind of patience is called the patience of accepting suffering. So when we do have suffering, we do have a problem, sickness or whatever, and it's not, there's no solution. We can't make it go away right away. So there are practices we can do to deal with this problem so that we can actually make it part of the path, part of our practice. And in that way, we're using this suffering to progress along the path and create virtue and get closer to enlightenment. So it's like transforming this unpleasant situation into something useful, something constructive. So I was planning to talk more about that next week, but just briefly, I mean, one way of doing that is just using the problem to have more compassion. You can think about how other people have this kind of problem too. I'm not the only one who has it. Many other people have it as well. And so then you can meditate on all the other people who have the same kind of problem and generate compassion for them. And you can do Tonglen as well, the taking and giving practice. Imagine taking on the suffering and giving happiness. So that's one of the best ways of dealing with problems when they don't immediately go away, using the problem to increase compassion for others.
The second question is from Min. Some people find complaining about their problems a way to release stress. Can that really work, or are they just fooling themselves?
I mean, it can be helpful if you're having a problem. It can be helpful to talk to somebody else about your problem, but it depends on how you talk. In what way are you talking about it? Are you talking about it just to complain and, you know, how terrible this is and how terrible that person is and oh, poor me. So in that way of talking, that's not helpful. You're probably just going to make other people depressed and angry as well. On the other hand, if you talk to someone, like if you say, hey, Guacheng, I want to talk to you. I've got this problem. It's really bothering me. And I just would like to talk to somebody about it. And then you're just talking about your feelings. You know, I feel really sad. I feel really unhappy. But you're not complaining and you're not blaming. You're just sharing. You know, I would like you to listen to me because it helps to have somebody else listen to me. And also you can ask for help. You can say, do you have any advice for me? Any advice that you could give me to deal with this problem better? So that kind of talk is not negative. It could even be very constructive. Yeah. So it depends on how you talk and what your motivation is.
Okay, actually there were like two more questions. Maybe we ask the third one and then the last one we keep it for the next round. How's that? Yeah, okay. So the third one is from Gyokchin. How do you develop compassion for people who have hurt you? And it's really difficult to think that they are your mothers in your past lives and remember that they too want happiness like us. Is there other method to overcome negative emotions arise from that?
Yeah, I mean, thinking of others as having been our mothers, that is a very difficult one. Most of us can't remember our past lives. And so, yeah, we might not feel convinced in the teachings that this person has been my mother before. So if that doesn't work, then I mean, for me, what's helpful is to contemplate how this other person is suffering. If somebody's doing hurtful things, if they're behaving in a hurtful way, that they must be suffering. Their mind is not in a good state, not peaceful and happy, but it's disturbed, it's confused, they have negative thoughts, negative emotions that's driving them to behave that way. So you try to imagine that state of mind the person has and understand that they are not peaceful, they are not happy, especially if you understand about the Buddhist path and about real peace. Real peace means when your mind is free of all disturbing thoughts and disturbing emotions and karma, you know, the peace of nirvana, the peace of enlightenment. So if you think about those states of mind, and then you think about this person's state of mind, and it's like so clear that they don't have peace, they don't have happiness, and they're just creating more suffering for themselves by the way they're behaving. So they're going to have even more suffering in the future if they keep going in that direction. So contemplate that, and hopefully that will help you to have some compassion for this person. But if that doesn't work, I'll think of something else for next week. But try at least not to have anger and hatred towards them, because if you do have anger and hatred, you're making yourself suffer. If you can recognize how, if you know, being angry and hateful just makes suffering for yourself. Do you want that? Do you want to do that to yourself? Do you want to make yourself suffer by dwelling on anger and hatred? Okay, no. So if you can recognize that that isn't helpful, then try to at least have a neutral state of mind. If you can't go all the way to have compassion for the other person, try to at least keep your mind neutral, not angry and not hateful. And pray to the Buddha, you know, ask the Buddha for help. You know, and say, Buddha, please help me. I don't want to be angry and hateful towards this person. Please help me find a way, you know, to not be angry and hateful. And one day I would like to even feel compassion. Right now I can't feel compassion, but please help me one day to be able to have compassion for them. So maybe that would be helpful. Okay, so let's stop here and we'll continue next week. And if you have, maybe you could email me the questions that were sent in and I didn't have time for, then I can prepare some answers for next week. So let's end by doing a dedication, just a mental dedication of our positive energy from coming together and listening to these teachings, thinking about them, asking questions about them. So we started with a good motivation, wanting to help others. And so now let's share the positive energy we've created with other people and other beings, with all living beings. May it help them find genuine peace of mind and happiness, freedom from suffering, and help them get closer to enlightenment, the fulfillment of their highest potential. Okay, thank you. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you Untitled Buddhist Center for organizing.
Thank you, Venerable.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Let me see if we can mute all. Okay. Meant to unmute all, but I couldn't. Wait, hold on.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you,
Thank you
Venerable.
very much.
Thank you, Venerable.
Take care. Good night.
Thank you,
Bye.
Venerable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you, watching.
Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you, watching.
Thank you for watching.
贵姓啦，啊，贵姓嘛，这是稍微